You're good. Thank you, Francis.
Commission members, this is Meryl Carver Owens. She lives in Lawrence and she grew up in Pittsburgh, is that right? That's correct. It's my neck of the woods down in southeast Kansas. Meryl attended Pittsburgh State University in Cape Law. She's been a capital appellate defender for the state since 2012. And outside of law, Meryl has been a freelance writer and photographer and a pretty expensive volunteer in her community. Thank you for coming. I get the pleasure of asking the first question. Try to warm you up with this one. Can you tell us just what you feel like you uniquely bring to the court if you were appointed?
Sure. Sure. So the 2019 docket of the Kansas Supreme Court consisted of 72% criminal cases, and 59% of those cases were actually litigated on behalf of indigent defendants. But if you look at the experience of the justices on our court right now, that doesn't reflect that at all. We have 6 out of 6 justices that have pretty extensive civil experience. We have about 3 former prosecutors. We have 3 district court judges who are all directly from Shawnee County, but we don't have a single person who has any significant experience litigating cases on behalf of criminal defendants. And given the composition of the court's docket, I think that is quickly becoming unconscionable. There are very specific issues, very specific ethical issues, client management issues. I'm not certain, for example, and I don't know this, but how many of our justices spent time in one of our Kansas prisons? Do they know what a segregation cell looks like on the inside? And when you're you're trying to make the best decisions possible for the state, having a variety of experiences is incredibly important, and that's something that our court is lacking. The other thing, as you mentioned, of course, is I grew up in Pittsburgh. My family is also there. My husband's family is still there, and there are also no justices right now from the southeast corner of the state, and there haven't been since Justice Alberti retired, a decade or more ago. So I think that geographic diversity is also incredibly important. Because our court should be representative of all Kansans, not just people from specific areas.
All right, other questions? I have one. If we, I saw the recommendation letter. I think it was Jeff Green or somebody with Northwestern Pritzker claim. How were you involved in that? I understand it probably had to do with some of the Kansas cases that were back in the United States Supreme Court.
Yes, so when the petition for certiorari got granted in the Carr cases in 2013, 2014, we are a 2-person shop. That's our office, 2 lawyers and 1 very intrepid legal assistant. And we quickly realized that that was going to be beyond the scope of what we can handle with just the 2 of us. And so we specifically sought out expert SCOTUS counsel who, what they were doing then was they were really involving local counsel as part of the team the whole way. We didn't want to just hand our case off and then get a decision back 9 months later. We really wanted to be part of it all. And Jeff, that's the way he does it. That's the way we did it in Kaler as well. For Kaler, I was lead counsel at the state level as well, and so I had a tremendous amount of decision-making authority in that. I'm particularly proud because Jeff came to me and said, I think it's time for Sarah Shrub to argue this case, and as you know, there are so few women that are arguing at the Supreme Court, and so to get to say, yes, that's what we should do, I was incredibly proud of that.
Is there a lengthy prep time on that? I don't know exactly what's involved when you're.
Oh, it's an incredibly involved process. From in Kaler, filing the cert petition was 3 months of work, 3 or 4 months of work, and then the briefing process. There were booths all across the country. We attended a couple virtually, but we did a couple. We went to a couple in person as well. Recruiting amicus for those cases. We had one brief that about 300 law professors signed on in support of our position. So just it's an incredibly complex process if you've never done it before. And it's good to have help.
Where do you work the wrong works? He referred to you as serving as partly as an employee and answering and responding questions in his reference letter for you.
Sure. So Ron he's the president of the Board of Indigent Defense Services, which is the board that supervises the public defender system in the state. So I've had some interactions with him through that process. Also, he is a member of the Kansas Coalition Against the Death Penalty too. So we work together on that issue as well.
I'm sorry, I'm not apologize. I didn't mean to do that. I got carried away. Who's next? Linda.
Well, first of all, welcome, we're so glad to have you here. I mean, your preferences are impeccable. Honestly, you treat people with a great deal of respect, regardless of what the situation is. Can you discuss with us your opinion of the death penalty and how that might affect your qualifications on Supreme Court?
Of course, in a limited way, of course. In law school, the thing that really lit me up, the classes I really got excited about, it's kind of nerdy to admit, but were the procedure classes. Civ Pro, Crim Pro, I love those classes. And the whole idea of due process, really, which is what that is about, is that we put a case in, and then we put it through this process, and then we assume that the results at the end of it comes out fair. And so it's very interesting questions about how much of that has to break down before we doubt the results, issues like that. But the biggest part of due process, the most important thing that anchors it, is that everybody stays in their own lane. So prosecutors are prosecuting cases, defense attorneys are advocating on behalf of their clients, and judges have to stay neutral in the middle. And that was something I thought long and hard about before I applied for this job, because I think it's vitally important that we have justices who can follow the law. And obviously I can't say how I would rule on any particular issues, but I can follow the law, and that includes death penalty cases.
A question? Sluggish after that, Carol.
What is your vision for the future of the Supreme Court? Thinking in terms of what challenges you think might be presented to them, or what opportunities?
Well, one thing that's sort of course all across the country right now is how politicized things have become. I think that that's incredibly damaging to an impartial judiciary. And there's no magic bullet for that. What I think the solution is just have a lot of public education and as much transparency as we can put forward. One thing that our court does really well right now, I mean, we've been live streaming audio arguments since before I started practicing law, forever now. The travel dockets are very good, getting out, Justice Nuss made the observation that they need to be at night so people can come and see what the court's doing. And I think that is, whatever the future of the judicial branch is, that most certainly has to be a part of it. One thing that I see a lot of other courts doing across the country, that our court does a little bit, but maybe not as much as they could, is I follow a ton of judges and justices on social media these days. And it can be incredibly humanizing and, and they're being appropriate, they're following their oaths, but the public gets to see a little bit more about who they are than they do when judges are closer away. And I think, whatever the future of our judicial branch is, that has to be part of it.
Yes, so what elements of your education, training, experience have prepared you to deal with issues around business, commercial issues, regulations, particularly given your experiences that you talked about today?
Sure. Well, the biggest thing that I am, even more so than a criminal defense attorney, is a researcher. I am, as we call it, kindly, an appellate nerd. I love deep diving into big research projects. So the answer is that I don't necessarily know as much as some other people know about these issues, but I know where to find the answers and I know how to find out. Another thing I like to do when I'm confronted with something new is I like to go and talk to other people who are experts in that issue. And the good news about our work right now is there are plenty of experts on that issue, of course, and plenty of people to go and and have healthy debates with and answer about those ideas. Kind of the flip side of that question is who is the expert when a complex criminal issue comes up, and that's the role that I feel like I really fill.
Gloria?
Okay. One of the major responsibilities of members of the Supreme Court, although it doesn't rise to the top when people think about being on the Supreme Court, are the administrative responsibilities, supervising the district courts, and each Supreme Court justice has 5 or 6 different districts that they're responsible for, and doing a lot of administrative work. What, in your experience, would qualify you or help you do that kind of work?
Well, recently, the most recent project I've been working on is in April, we went to our executive director and we decided that it was time for the public defender system to have a well-being committee. And so we recruited attorneys from every office in the state and put them together and ended up doing the first ever, I think, survey of public defender well-being issues and all of the herding cats and tracking down things and supervising when that involves. And that's actually, I think, headed over to the legislature today, so I'm very proud of that. The other thing is just being lead counsel in a capital brief is actually involves incredible administrative responsibilities. The last brief we filed it jointly with the Capital Conference Office. There were 4 of us working on it at the same time, and I love all of those 3 people dearly. But when you have a group of very smart attorneys with very specific ideas about the law and very specific ideas about writing styles, we can have bullet pointed debates sometimes about whether there should be 1 space after a period or 2 spaces after a period. So being able to channel that and end up with a brief that is well written, and it looks like one person wrote it at the end, and have everybody like each other, I think takes a tremendous amount of administrative skill.
Dennis, you have your hand up.
Would you explain what are your duties as the chief of the Capital Appellate Defense?
Sure. So we are a small office, and that's because ethically on every criminal case, you have to have at least 2 attorneys. That's the ethical requirement. But so we are co-equal attorneys. We both have equal decision-making power. Usually, just for logistical purposes, with each case, one person takes lead and the other person is co-counsel for that. I right now am lead counsel in 2 of our office's cases, and my co-counsel is an incredibly brilliant attorney, but he's only been doing the job for just a couple of years now, so I've really taken a leadership role in helping to train and introduce them to capital work.
Who is that?
Clayton Perkins. And the other thing is just there's a lot of negotiating that goes back and forth with what cases we're going to take, supervising our legal assistant, things like that, and those are relatively in my purview almost all the time.
I was interested in your getting down to the nitty gritty on the prosecutorial error or the prosecutorial misconduct. You want to talk about that?
Sure. That case, it was a problem on both sides because as a prosecutor walking into court, you don't want to hear, and I sympathize with this, you have committed misconduct. That's, that tends to get people's hackles up, and for good reason. So the prosecutors hated that label. And on the defense side, it was very hard for us because we had to prove that the prosecutors had ill will to prove misconduct. And that's very hard to prove because it's what's going on in someone's head. And a lot of times, some of the most damaging mistakes in a trial aren't actually malicious mistakes at all. Sometimes they can be very innocent mistakes, mistake of law, and those can hurt a defendant very badly as well. So I filed a brief in that case arguing that we needed to chuck that standard and start over. And it was ultimately, I didn't win the case actually, but it was ultimately successful in creating a fairer standard. And that's one of the cases I'm proudest of for that reason, because I think it really, on both sides, everybody's a lot happier with that system now.
What about criminal history?
Oh, goodness. So are you talking about electric issues? That is a thicket right now. And you know, how much time do we have? But it's certainly something that I'm aware of, that I've been, talking to colleagues about for a few years now, and it seems like every time we try to fix it, it gets a little bit worse. But it's an issue that I understand. It's not necessarily an issue at this point that I can sit here and give you a very easy solution for how to fix, because we're deep in the weeds there.
Go ahead, Chris.
So reviewing trial records and writing briefs, you have certainly read a lot about trials. Have you had a chance to observe trials or do any trial work yourself?
I haven't done a whole lot of trial work myself. I have, I've sat in on some hearings over the years and things like that, which is important. It's important that judges have a working knowledge of that. I would also say that most trial attorneys only really have experience practicing in a couple of geographic areas of the state, whereas my experience reviewing trials, as you say, not participating in them necessarily, is really statewide. I have a much better idea than I think a lot of people do of the legal character in Garden City as opposed to Wichita, as opposed to Pittsburgh, because I've seen cases from all over the state. And as you know from my packet, I am a trail runner when I'm not lawyering, and one of the things that they teach you in that is that specificity is really important. So if you're gonna run long races, you need to do long training runs and so forth. And really, an appellate court justice's job is research and writing. And that's exactly what I do right now.
Yes, Chris.
Do you feel like group decision-making and open collaboration with others is a natural fit for you? Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. I have done, in addition to particularly the most recent brief where there were 4 of us that I led up, all of the SCOTUS work as well is, that's a huge team of attorneys, 12 to 15 attorneys who have working on appeal every time, and being able to work in a group like that is important. Also, the work, it's incredibly important to me, the work that we're doing for attorney well-being. I think that that's so important that we're taking care of those issues. And that's all been collaborative. My co-chair of the Women and Minorities Subcommittee, Stephen, is a wonderful attorney. He was out in police, he's moved since, and working with Jessica Glendinning, who is my co-chair of the bids well-being committee. We have to work in teams, and things work better when we work in teams like that. Another thing that's been really important to me in the last couple of years is I realized in 2018 that we were never getting all the capital attorneys in the state together in one place. We had all these individual siloed offices, and the writing never knew what the left was doing. And so to bring people together and to make sure that we had a chance to get to know each other a little bit, I started organizing a CLE for all of our capital attorneys, and I found a space to host it. I have lined up presenters. We're getting ready to do our 3rd year. It's gonna have to be virtual this year, sadly, but I think that's another example of how I work to get people together, and I think that really is the best way to practice law.
Have any other questions? If not, we have a couple minutes. Why don't you tell us anything that you feel that we should know, consider your application, we haven't discussed with you.
Sure. You guys asked great questions, and we hit a lot of the high points that I wanted to hit. So actually, I think I'll leave you with a short story, if that's okay. A couple of years ago, a case landed on my desk, and I read the file, and I called the client up, and I said, well, sir, I have some good news for you, and I have some bad news for you. Good news is, this is a winning case. You have a dead man winner sentencing issue. I'm going to win your case. The bad news is your sentence is so short already, and this was such a low-level felony that there's no way I can process your case through the court in time to get you out of prison. There's just nothing I can do. And this guy had the most horrific sense of humor. He constantly maintained a little bit, and he said, well, I told my wife I was going to be home by Christmas. I was scheduled to be home a couple weeks before Christmas. And I guess that'll do, but, if you were a really good attorney, you can eat home at Thanksgiving. I don't want to eat this slimy turkey, prison turkey for Thanksgiving, and I would like to eat a piece of my West Coast pie for Thanksgiving. And we joked about that throughout his case, but it was one of the proudest moments of my legal career, and I'm not even joking. I got to tell him the Friday before Thanksgiving, and with some persistence and some luck, we got it home in time to have that pumpkin pie. And, it's a fun story, but you guys know, you've seen my packets. We've talked today about my appellate experience, my writing experience, the geographic diversity I can bring to the court, and the diversity of work experience, which I think is just very, very, very badly needed. But the biggest thing that I really carried through my legal career is a really unshakable belief that everybody has dignity and every case is important, from capital murder cases to Mr. Pumpkin Pie. And I think that's something that Kansas really deserve in a Supreme Court justice, and that's certainly something that I would carry to the nation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Your application was beautifully organized. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Hold it.
Afternoon, everyone.
Pretty much the same place for us. Yeah.
Fellow commission members, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Russell Keller. Mr. Keller graduated from Northwestern Law, which I think it's important to note is one of the top 10 law schools in the country. Mr. Keller graduated in the top 10% of his class of the law school. And then it was all downhill from there. Just kidding. 24 years later, he has spent time clerking 2 terms for the U.S. Court of Appeals in the 10th Circuit and spent several years at Stinson in the civil litigation department. So, Mr. Keller, I will throw out the first question. I'll try to make it a softball so you can warm up. Tell us why you are the most qualified candidate for the Kansas Supreme Court.
Sure. I appreciate that question. When we met last time on this group, I emphasized 5 things in response to that question. And we would be very pleased to hear that I'm now boiled it down to 3 things that I'm going to emphasize in response to that question. So, in the sake of brevity and I think clarity, I hope this helps. So I made three things I said about that. The first one is a little bit pedestrian, but I still think it's important to touch on a little bit with the introduction. I think I have a combination of some high-level professional experience that kind of cuts across several fields. So in the private sector, as you alluded to, I work for 2 large and I think respected law firms, one of the larger firms in Kansas City for a number of years. And before that, I worked at one of the largest law firms in the United States when I was in Chicago. Now I'm working for a small law firm, and I'm very pleased to have that opportunity. And you may recall from the diligence you did on the last candidate, successfully made it through this process. That firm, among other things, does work on behalf of the rural hospitals, among other things across the state. So there's that on the private sector side, and then the public sector side. I have worked in government in some capacities. I was part of the Attorney General's administration in Missouri, where I was an assistant AG and then unit leader for litigation. So I was responsible for managing 2 of the potentially higher exposure, more complex pieces of civil litigation there. And then again, as you alluded to, I worked for 2 federal judges, one as a district court judge in Chicago, and then twice now for a federal appellate court judge in Kansas as part of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, if all you knew about me was sort of what you could read on the CV, those basic points there, you might draw some conclusions about me that I'm not sure would be entirely accurate. So this is point number 2. I think I have some life experience that's perhaps a bit more complex than immediately meets the eye. Again, if you just look at my resume, and go, this guy's principally working sort of like shoot fence firms, some Johnson County, that pretty much tells me what I need about this guy. I hope that you'll at least entertain the possibility that sort of surface level analysis will lead out some important things. And understand why. I want to touch again briefly on something I did the first time we met, the last 2 times we met. And that is to give you a little sense of sort of where I came from and how, where I grew up. As I mentioned last time, I'm from Emporia, that's about an hour away from here in the first district, town 25,000 people. Very proud to be in Emporia. And my parents still live there, so I was there as recently as this last week. I think it's important to not forget that today is important. The poverty rate is greater than 20%. That's higher than the statewide average, it's higher than the national average. And that is where I grew up. That's where I experienced childhood. And that is where my family and my friends and other members of the community started teaching me many of the core principles, which I still aspire today. I make that reference to teaching, not just in sort of a metaphorical sense, but also in a very literal sense. My mom, for example, before she decided to stay home and raise me and my knucklehead brother, she was a teacher, taught middle school. My brother, in turn, he's still not a knucklehead, he's now a university professor in Texas. My father taught at the State University in Emporia for the better part of 45 years. And my father's father, in the 1930s, traveled all the way from New York to study at Southwestern College in Winfield, Kansas, not to be a stockbroker, not to be a business executive, but to be a teacher. And 50 years after he matriculated there, after a lifetime of doing just that, being a teacher, he was inducted into Southwestern State Affairs Hall of Fame. So I share that bit of family history with you, sort of to convey this message. I've had some terrific opportunities. I really have. And I know that those opportunities are not things that everybody gets, fairly or unfairly. But I emphasize that I don't think any of those opportunities sort of arose and are broken. They didn't arise because of any family wealth, that didn't exist. They didn't arise because of family political wealth, that didn't exist either. They arose because I was lucky to be surrounded by people who value education, value teaching, value learning. And that goes a long way to explaining why I'm truly excited about the possibility of teaching learning knowing as a member of the issue. So that is point third and final. And which I would describe as the possibility of an enduring or lasting legacy. When you're a appellate court clerk, not surprisingly, you spend 100% of your time on appellate work. That's all you do. Appellate opinions, you're analyzing, researching appellate issues, and you're writing prose for appellate purposes, whether it's in the form of a petition or a draft opinion on whatever you do. That's what you do. In the process of doing that work, I think I've had a chance to observe which written opinions tend to stand the test of time. Which ones get cited in your opinion, which ones get relied upon, and thereby continue to shape the path of law, year after year, decade after decade. I don't think there's a formula, but you can often see a lot of common characteristics. They often almost always have that extra bit of insight, that extra bit of description, even if you're dealing with a familiar concept. And that extra turn of phrase that makes the point more memorable and more powerful than otherwise might be. And in my view, that type of judicial decision making, that type of opinion crafting, that is a form of medicine. It reminds me of one of the writer's characters in Fahrenheit 451, who says, we all have to leave something behind when we die, like a garden. What matters is how you touch the project. So when someone looks at what you've done, even after you are gone, whether the tree or the flower, you're still there. And because there's a big difference between someone who cuts lawns and someone who is truly a gardener. The lawn cutter, you may as well have never been there in the first place. But the gardener's work, that will last a long time. And I think if given the opportunity, I could be more than a line cutter as a member of the judiciary. You do that by approaching it with the garter scale. It's decided to do the cases based on individual facts, applying the law that applies to that situation, and taking that garter's approach. I think that builds something that lasts. And more than that, I think it sends a very powerful message to our citizens, because it says, look, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter your race, your color, your creed. When you come here, you may not like the result of the outcome. 50% of all cases of people that are in or don't like the result, but you are going to get a fair shake. You are going to get a fair hearing. You are going to get people who do their darndest to be impartially and without bias deciding the issues that you have brought to us. So that's very exciting and very prospect of being able to play a role in that process. It's exciting to me, and I think qualifications fit right in that excitement. So again, thanks for the opportunity for that softball to start the session off, and I'll be happy to answer further questions.
So kind of along those lines, talking about your experience, particularly with Judge Briscoe, it sounds like that involved evaluating cases and actually drafting opinions, drafting the written opinions. Is that right?
Correct. That is part of the process.
Can you talk to us about how you would take that process, whatever that looked like, and how that would translate to making decisions as part of the Kansas Supreme Court, collaborating with other justices, and how you think that would translate from your current experience?
Right. Well, for not saying anything too groundbreaking, right? The process is very simple, in my view. It's the same sort of pathway to reaching, what you hope is the correct appellate decision. So my role as a clerk, of course, you're the judge, of course, just like anyone now in the Kansas Supreme Court or in the Kansas Appellate Court. You're dealing with a broad range of cases. Whereas the clerk, you get a chunk of those cases on which you have to do the work. So you don't, get the full breadth of what the judge is doing, but you can see that. So I have a chance to observe. Then in the chunk of cases that you work on as a clerk, you are 100% into the details. That is your job, to make sure that you have covered everything. All possible issues that have been raised or could have been raised, all the authorities that go into whatever points that are up for debate in the case, and making sure, are we getting this right? And so that experience, both as a judge or some of that you do directly, some of that, of course, you're always supervising the process, even if you have staff or people working underneath you do that. That's why, because, I don't think you can decide cases just by sort of relying on staff 100%. Of course, they play an important role. You got to get your hands dirty, read some of the primary materials yourself, along with cases. So, in clerking for circuit, I had to see that process. And of course, you don't get invited to the panel discussions after the oral argument. That's probably as it should be. But you talk with the boss afterwards to figure out sort of what came up, and if you're getting an opinion, to find out what the judges found, most material. So again, at least as a secondary source, I've had exposure to that type of decision-making process as well. Again, that's the same process in my view for any help, whether it's in state or federal. That's what you do. You do the work and collaborate with your fellow judges to come to a decision. So my collaboration, again, wouldn't be so much with the judges' office, but I certainly did collaborate with my co-workers in there, and even when you get the case, you have an opportunity oftentimes to talk with them and make sure you're reaching the right decision outside of there. And that was absolutely part of the process.
Could I ask you a question, Ms. Carr? In your most recent experience with Judge Briscoe, how many clerks did she have?
Yes, I think this is common for all active federal judges, but don't hold me on that. So, but she has 4 clerks, and again, I think all federal clerks is considered, that's true. And so for this particular chambers, there's one permanent clerk, a person who was there, in fact, when I did the job 20 years ago. He's been there a very long time. So he's been there almost an entire time. And then the other 3 then are term clerks, all doing 1-year terms. And so I was in that category, this time they did the same job, 20 years ago. Yeah, so it's 4 people and then a staff person along with that.
It sounds like, at least as she describes it in her letter to us, she turned you loose with responsibility on some fairly sticky problems that she had to resolve. Is that a fair comment or not?
Well, she said it's fair comment.
I think you're a politician.
I'm not going into that. And she's been very generous. And so, I mean, I certainly took on some matters, as did my co-workers, that, were difficult. And whatever level she entrusted me to, deal with those issues, I greatly appreciate that. I don't want to put words in my mouth on that. I felt like she trusted me, but, again, that's got to come, I think, from the horse's mouth. These were some of the greatest experiences in my professional career. So whatever I'm saying here, I hope you're not taking this as anything other than a sign of that. And I greatly did her for the opportunities that I had to work with her. I do again in a heartbeat. So.
One of your other reference letters was from Mark Henry at Stinson.
Yes.
Had you worked personally with Mark when you were there?
I did. Now, those tended to be earlier, I was there about 12 years. And so the work that I did directly with Mark tended to be, I guess, mostly in the first half of that 12 years when I was an associate, and I know I worked on some matters with Mark when I was an associate. I was very fortunate to work with him. Now Judge Crabtree, sort of as I came in to the firm at that time. So yes, I did, although, and then he transitioned as well. He was a litigator, as you know, before becoming a managing partner. So he's doing other things, later in his career. So later in my career and his, I don't think we collaborated on a case directly. That's because he wasn't litigating. At that point, he was doing the whole firm.
Now you've left Judge Briscoe and you're now, are you with the Ford firm?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I guess they had an opening recently, didn't they?
Yes, it did.
How long have you been there?
Well, now about a month. I started just right after the last function.
Do you understand that your work there, a lot of it will be appellate work? Is that what you're understanding?
At least for now, that's right. Yeah, and in fact, as I discussed with the principal there, what I might be doing as I came in, we kind of went through the list of appellate things that were on the docket. Many of these now are sort of in the phase where we're doing the plot, but they're nonetheless selected. And if there's going to be an argument, that's still coming up. And whether I play a principal role in that or a support role or whatever, yes, that was sort of the implication. At least in the short term, I'd be helping, assist getting these cases all over the decision.
Thank you, Linda.
One of your references states that you are without question the most honest and morally centered person I've ever known, both within and outside the legal profession. His moral compass is absolutely true. I'm thinking about that as I hear your responses to our chairman and others, where you're clarifying at all times that we don't misunderstand any more than what we were trying to assume. So I congratulate you on that. Would you like to speak with us about your pro bono services, please?
I can, and this will be a short discussion because in candor, I've done some, but not a lot of pro bono. And in fact, as a clerk, I did practice probably all I can as a clerk. I don't know if that precludes. I'm sure you can volunteer for an organization as a clerk, but you can't litigate cases on.
Did you not organize others though to do it? Did you not organize others to do pro bono?
Well, the last, I'd say, material pro bono work that I did was when I was at Stinson. And there was a project organized statewide in Missouri to provide defense counsel to indigent criminal defendants. And I'm not a criminal lawyer, but everybody knew that going in, the whole program was organized. So you got trained in a criminal matter, and then you helped defend someone who did not have the money, to defend him or herself. And I did that with an associate. That's the last, I'd say, sort of substantive pro bono work I did at that.
Excuse me, Katie.
Mr. Keller, and to clarify, the pro bono manager at instance, and indicated that you actually stepped forward to volunteer and were one of the first partners to volunteer for that project. So I think it was Judge Briscoe who accused you of being humble and modest. I just want to give you an opportunity to take credit for that. It sounds like that could have been a really big labor doing that public defender project. So.
Well, thank you for saying that, and it is true, and I know who must have said that, so that's very kind of her to say. It is true that for that particular project, I assume the firm sold it. But that was the first time that the firm had got involved in that type of program work on behalf of indigent criminal defendants. So it is true that I was the first one at Simpson to jump into that project and to do one with an associate, getting trained, through the public defender's office to handle that competently, which I'm thinking hope we did.
Thank you.
That is true. It was the first one that firm did.
And that actually wasn't my question, so I will make another one. We've talked about your significant intellectual and academic performance, but I want to have you talk a little bit about kind of the other roles expected of Supreme Court Justice. So that's kind of twofold as I see it. First, the administration piece, administering courts across the state, and how you see your skills adding to that piece. And then the second is just kind of participating in the public understanding of the courts, the role of our courts in our system of government, and how you view contributions you could make toward that. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I hope nothing I said suggests that I kind of put some focus on sort of the bread and butter decision making and opinion writing, which I do believe is sort of bread and butter in the public court. It is by far not the only responsibility of the public court. You're absolutely right. It goes disciplinary proceedings, just the wrath of other important administrative things that have to happen to make the trains run on time in any institution, any public court. I couldn't agree more. There's a lot more work that goes into running an institution. Again, I think first of all, working in some large and now small institutions helps with that. Even though the tasks are not necessarily identical to what you get in court, and then having some experience at least being able to look through the window pane as a clerk to kind of see, even though you're not necessarily on every conversation, to kind of observe by osmosis how courts run. I think that's some valuable experience, I'd say, in that regard as well. And to the point, to the part of your question about sort of outreach and public understanding, I mean, that's in part why I wanted to emphasize, I guess, in the opening statement, sort of the enthusiasm that comes from my background, other people in my family, for sort of the education component of any job. I mean, there's an education component, and whether you have public outward-facing education or not, there's internal and external education that has to occur. Both sort of bringing your own people along. I can analogize that when you're a partner firm. You have responsibility for helping others too. So move the ball forward and educating people on firm practices and procedures so that they can improve. These are smart people. Let them loose, train so they can do that, and not assume that you have all the answers. So the public outreach part is actually fairly exciting to me. I know not only does the court sit at various locations around the state from time to time, which I view as not only deciding cases, that's part of the outreach function in court too. That's all very appealing to me, and I think the education piece is important in today's world as ever. Even the information that sometimes circulates about what courts do and not do, it's not always accurate. So I look forward to that role, and I very much realize that it is our role. Anyone who serves on any appellate court.
Dennis.
Oh, Dennis, I'm sorry.
Mr. Keller, thanks for coming back and taking notes to me.
My pleasure.
In the context of an independent judiciary and its relationship to the legislature's relationship to the executive office across the street, what do you see
sessions, I know I got a similar question to the effect of, you know, what do you see as an issue in the court now? How could you make that? Your question's a little different from that. But I'm not sure the first time the question came around, the answer to everybody's satisfaction. I don't want to be candid now why I may not have done it the first time. Very well, try to do better this time. You know, I'm very hesitant. First of all, I don't have any sort of glaring, you know, deficiency in court now that I, you know, I'm just dying to tell you. I actually don't have one. Even if I did, I'd be hesitant. You know, when you're joining a group of fellow employees that, you know, sort of come out there and say, oh yeah, you know, this is being handled terribly. So that, if there was any reticence before or today, you hear my answer to the question, that's why. It's not because I'm trying to dodge the question or hide something. But in your question, I view as a little different in that you've raised not only just sort of, you know, what could be better with the court, but what could be better in the relationships between the court, executive, you know, the legislature. And there too, you know, that's a difficult question to answer. I mean, the obvious thing, which has been the source of advocacy in part of the court, which is probably the most of you do, is, as you probably know, salaries, judicial salaries are compared to the other 50 states, not very high. In fact, they're near the bottom. And so, you know, over time, you know, sort of not having as many resources, perhaps as your cohorts do in other states to carry out the business of the court. That's something that, you know, although I don't have a plan I can present to you today on how to solve the problem, it's certainly something that we on the mind, and at the very least, part of advocacy. So, you know, but if we can swing this, I know there's a lot of other budget priorities, and they're very important budget priorities, but if we could swing a little bit more, you know, resource-wise to the third branch, I think that would actually pay benefits, double or triple what you invest in the court. So that, I think, is probably the best answer I can give you in terms of things that can improve in branches. And I wish I had a more specific solution on how to get there. The best I can tell you at this point is, you know, I think I would be an advocate within, you know, appropriate. I know the Chief Justice usually gives that speech that highlights, you know, sort of the state of the judiciary and where the budgets are. But I can certainly be supportive of that process.
Anyone else? Well, we have no other questions. I think we've had questions before, I guess. If there's anything you would like to add, though, I want to give you an opportunity to do it. Now we have time, and if there's something further you'd like to say to help us in our evaluation of your application, well, we appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I would say that, you know, thanks to the opening questions. So, you know, when you get the opening / closing statement, you know, right at the beginning, that was very helpful. I don't want to take more of your time. We do one day here together. But again, don't view that as a sign of disinterest in this process. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, just as I was last 2 times we've been able to meet now 2 new members. I'm glad to meet everybody again for the first time and the second time. So I'm very excited about this process. I really appreciate the opportunity to address everybody here today. And just out of respect for your time, you know, to ask some further questions, I'll turn this to you next year. Again, don't take that as a sign of disinterest. I'm very excited about this process and glad to be here today.
Thank you very much.
We have a quick break.
Yeah. We'll break for 2 to 2:15. Oh, you got you, Jerry.
Jeff, say something about your
That was just a break, and so that wasn't anything, so somebody,
That's why.
so you guys are back live, you guys are back live again.
You got it on?
Yeah, come on up here, Marcia.
We're all smiling at you, Marcia, you just can't see.
I'm smiling too, in case you can't tell.
All right, we're ready to go again, I guess. Gerald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, this is Marcia A. Wood. She graduated from KU Law School. I won't hold that against her since I'm a Washburn grad. In 1992 with honors. And since 2008, she's been a principal in the prestigious firm in Wichita, Martin Pringle. And she's applied with us before, and I welcome you back, Marcia. And the softball pitch of the week, according to your representative from Wichita, is, Marcia, tell us in your own words why you would like to be nominated for the governor for appointment to the Supreme Court.
Okay, good afternoon, thank you all for being here and doing this important job. Being a judge is something that, as long as I've thought about being in the law, which really is since college, is something that appealed to me. It suits my temperament because I'm a balanced and even person, I like to think, and it's a position of service, first and foremost, to take care of the people of the state of Kansas. I believe I have the right qualities to do justice, not only fair-mindedness and integrity, but diligence, intelligence, and the ability to get to the root of the issues.
Marcia, one of the things that fascinates me about your application is the diversity of experience. Could you address the commission and tell them the types and kinds of meaty legal issues that you've had to handle both at trial and then doing the bulk of the appellate writing in that firm?
Okay, yes, at Martin Pringle, my position as a brief writer touches on just about every kind of case the firm handles, and we are a general practice firm with a variety of practice areas. I've worked on a number of medical malpractice cases, product liability cases. Those can be highly complex. They all involve a lot of expert witnesses, very technical fact issues, the mechanics of an airplane and surgical procedures and all kinds of things like that. And also meaty legal issues on motion practice and at trial and on appeal. So some other kinds of cases, worked on both sides of consumer-related cases, foreclosures, collections. I've worked on some employment law matters, again, both for plaintiffs and defendants. Those are kind of the high points for litigation. As you see on my application, I also have a background with transactional practice, and that's municipal finance, mostly industrial revenue bonds, but also some general obligation bonds. So anything from financing a hospital wing to
a city improving its sewer system. And those legal matters involve tax issues, the bond statutes, of course, securities law, general contract law. So I do have a wide breadth of experience from those. And then going back a little further to first graduated from law school and clerked for the federal court. We of course handle a wide variety of civil matters and also criminal cases. So I sat in on some criminal trials. I wrote opinions in court of judge's signature for review, of course, in criminal matters on motions to suppress evidence, sentencings, just about anything that comes in front of the court, I would work on it.
That's all, excuse me.
I'm interrupting the chairman. Can I get away with that?
That's what we all ought to do is interrupt the chairman. I noticed that in your reference material that you worked on some med-mal cases with John Gibson, or appeals for John Gibson, is that right? So.
John has been a counsel for a co-defendant in multiple cases that I've worked on.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to really emphasize with this commission was your academic success while in school, and noted it with your composition work that you do for the firm, but also your community service work. Would you briefly go down, we can read,
Okay.
but in your own words, prioritize the community service that you did that you think is most important for us to consider when we consider your application?
Okay, I think there are probably two things I would emphasize. One is my work with Dear Neighbor and Stepstone.
What are they?
Dear Neighbor Ministries is a not-for-profit in Wichita that provides a variety of services, mostly directed at an area in southeast Wichita that has a lot of poverty and all the issues that go along with having an area that's got a lot of poverty. So they provide a food pantry. There is a food truck connected with the Lord's Diner, which serves meals to homeless and other at-risk people. They have provide a tax program. They have representative payee program, and some counseling services, rent assistance, utilities assistance, a variety of services for that population. Again, there's sort of other parts of Wichita that it's mainly neighborhood focused, which I think is terrific. It just gets at the root of where the problems lie. Stepstone is an affiliated organization, the sister corporations that provides transitional housing and support services for survivors of domestic violence. It's been in existence for 25 years now, and I've been involved in one way or another for 21 years of its existence. It now has a multifamily housing component, and again, counseling, children's programs, lots of services. I just feel so fortunate in my life that that's a really tangible way to give back and help lift other people that may not have the success or luck or benefits that I've had. And I think serving at-risk populations is desperately needed and really valuable. And as the saying goes, I get as much as I give out of that. So
What's number two?
Number two, and I'm sure I'm get really passionate about Stepstone and Dear Neighbor. They're very near my heart. Number two is water service.
And at least some of you know what that's like and what that entails. And I do think it's really important as a lawyer to give through and to the bar in whatever way we can.
Thank you. I'm going to turn you over back to the chairman.
Since I don't understand, with bar service, is that organization, does that benefit attorneys or the community, or how does that work?
That's a really good question, and I probably should have talked about.
That's all right. That's all right.
The answer is both. The Bar Association has community service projects that they take on from time to time. They also have programs that help lawyers in a lot of ways. Social functions, which is really good for collegiality and which ultimately ends up serving clients, which is part of the community. Continuing education programs, assistance for lawyers that are struggling with addiction, depression, any other issues. And diversity programs, and including ones that reach out to high school kids and help them get integrated into get to know lawyers, and have the opportunity to do things like come up here to the Kansas Judicial Center. Kids that may otherwise never have had that opportunity. So it is both service to the bar and service from the bar out.
We're very aware that you're referred to as a great leader, because not only your service to the Wichita Bar Association, but the other organizations as well. With all your contribution, the time it takes for these service projects, do you think that might interfere with your, or how would you manage that with should you be selected for the Supreme Court?
The timing is actually really good because I was president of the Wichita Bar Association 2016 to 17, so I'm through with that. My term on the Steps on the Dear Neighbor Board ended about the same time. I've been involved, continue to be involved at a reduced commitment kind of level. I'm actually between boards right now, so I'm thinking about what comes next in the way of service and what I will have time to do. And then, of course, starting in March, we all get a reset, right? So I'm at kind of a pause on those things right now and
What have you been doing during the pandemic?
Going for long walks, cooking, and working at home. I actually consider myself very fortunate. I've got to spend more time with my teenage daughter, which has been a terrific thing. For me, in all sincerity, it's going to sound smart, but I'm not sure it's good for her. But she's spending a lot of time with her parents, and that's got its advantages, but it's got its disadvantages too. So I'm finding new ways to take care of what needs to be taken care of and let go of the things that don't need so much attention. By and large, it's been really healthy for me.
So you had the opportunity to choose what things needed to move forward and what things could wait?
That's probably a fair way to put it. And just realize that a lot of the things I was stressing out about were probably never worth it. I'm in my 50s now, so I'm kind of slowly learning those lessons anyway.
Thank you.
Gloria?
I think I know the answer to this question, but for the benefit of the commission, you submitted a writing sample that has somebody else's name on
Oh, okay.
it. The name of Tom Hamlin.
Tom Hamlin.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how doing appellate work in a law firm works.
Okay.
That's something that's actually changed over time too. But the answer is that generally I'm not the lead counsel for the litigation. My job is almost by definition a behind the scenes job. There are briefs where I do end up signing. It's a matter of discussion among me and my partners for a particular case, who makes the most sense to be the one with their name on the line. One thing that's changed is that now the appellate court's electronic filing system, or at least is what we've been told, will only allow the brief to be signed and submitted by the person who is designated as the lead attorney. So, for nearly all cases, that means I can't be the one signing it.
But that doesn't mean you didn't write.
I absolutely wrote it, yeah. Yeah, I absolutely wrote that one and yeah.
Other question?
Oh, yes, okay. You have a lot of broad experiences, okay? Which of those in your law expertise, which of those do you really enjoy the most and which is your favorite?
There could never be a better job in the world than clerking for Judge Tice. So, right out of the gate, I had the best job I could possibly have. That is true both in terms of the legal challenges and in terms of getting to work with somebody like him who was so passionate about the law and really enjoyed being around lawyers and was such a good teacher. And then, of course, when he passed away, I got the opportunity to work with Judge Wesley Brown, who us here knew, and Judge Montevalot and Judge Tom Martin. So I got to see a variety of different styles of what it means to be a judge and how they work. I also really liked being the neutral. So being the one helping to write the opinions. I do love being an advocate. I've enjoyed that for the last 14 years, but I feel like home is being the neutral and being in the judiciary.
And how do you feel about the death penalty?
How do I feel about the death penalty? Well, I think I don't like it. I don't think anybody should like it. I think we need to be really careful with how it's applied, but it has been ruled constitutional and we need to apply the law as it is, not how we think it ought to be. But the way things are, things just that it needs to be very carefully considered in each and every case.
Anyone else? No question? Oh, you've worn them out, Marcia.
Take one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Francis.
I've heard this out of a few of the applicants today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Our Chief Justice mentioned to us this morning the importance of building public support, community support, and understanding of the judiciary. Do you have any thoughts or ideas on how you might tackle that challenge?
Well, first of all, I absolutely agree that's really important that the public has a lack of understanding of the judiciary and probably all branches of government, but more civics education, I think, is needed in the schools. And judges and justices play a role in that. I think going to civic groups and schools is really important. Other than that, being as transparent as possible, writing as clearly as possible. The judiciary needs to hold itself, and I think that's too, and stay to the highest levels of integrity. There's no room for hypocrisy in the judiciary. I think that covers.
Thank you.
Here's a hard one. What do you think, if anything, you like to be a Supreme Court justice?
I thought about this, and the one thing I haven't had much experience is I have a secretary right now that I share with 2 other lawyers, and that works really well. She's great. But I haven't had a staff. I haven't had the opportunity to delegate much legal work. Sometimes with very junior associates, sometimes with law clerks during the summer. But that's something that I would need to train myself, is to be to have a staff that and learn to rely on them to the extent I need to. I have control issues too, so.
Well, following on to that, one of the important jobs of the court is administrative,
Yes.
because they supervise all the courts in Kansas. And of course, they supervise all the lawyers and a lot of other things. So how do you feel you can handle those kinds of responsibilities?
Between having served my term as president of the Louisiana Bar Association and my 6 years and 1 month serving on the executive committee of Department of Law, the administrative functions are something that I've had experience with, or they're not the same administrative functions, but balancing the legal work and the administrative work, I'm not as concerned about that. I do have that experience, and I actually enjoy doing that work. I like digging into a budget.
Anyone else? No, Ms. Wood, is there anything you would like to tell us in conclusion that we should consider and think about and consider your application for the position? Anything else that we, particularly if it's something we haven't discussed, but even if we have, is there something further that you could add?
Okay, I would just like to reiterate that I've got a lot of the types of experience that I think would serve the courts well. I have experience within the judiciary. I have experience in private practice, both in a litigation type practice, a great deal of appellate work, and transactional and litigation based, which I don't think a lot of people probably have. And along with that, I've worked on almost every variety of legal matter. That's probably a wide variety of legal matters, let's say that, and tackled a lot of issues. So I think I have the experience that's necessary. I've been at this for closer to 30 years as a lawyer, which is unbelievable. I'm a strong, clear legal writer and have good analytical ability to get to the meat of an issue clearly and quickly process information. And then I believe I have the right temperament for the job. I work hard. I treat everybody fairly and equally. I have compassion, integrity, and I want to serve the state and the people of Kansas.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all for your time. I was on the merit selection panel for federal court for selection of a magistrate judge, and I believe I know how much work this is, so thank you all for your service.
Thank you.
Thanks much.
You guys hire yourself out.
Sure.
You got an LLM in that, Doug?
You wasn't listening.
Perfectly.
Trying to come up with something funny about hotel mics. If that's an L, something like that.
Something like that.
This one,
Dennis, I think you're up to bat, yeah.
Hold on 1 second, Dennis. Let me make sure we have that. That mic's not working, so. Wow.
I'm going to find Gloria's extra 7 minutes. For good.
What's that?
We're going to find your extra 7 minutes.
that's on you. Okay. Testing on you.
So, fellow commissioners, it's my pleasure to reintroduce to you some of you and introduce to you for the first time, new commissioners, Dennis Depew. His residence address is in Neota Shade, Kansas, southeast Kansas. His current occupation is in the Office of the Attorney General, Civil Litigation Division. His prior experience was a partner in the Depew Law Firm in Neota Shade for many years until 2015. And he's dealing with some very immediate issues now in the Attorney General's office and helping in Kansas. So I'll give you the first question here, Dennis.
Have most people been taking their masks off?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One second.
Just don't sneeze, Dennis.
I promise I won't. It's not amazing how much the world has changed since the last visit.
Well, Mr. Depew, you've been here, this is your third round, at least in this cycle. Tell us why you should be one of the nominees to the governor.
Well, thank you. I believe that I bring a unique combination of attributes that none of the other applicants for this position possess. If you look at my history and my materials, you will find that I have had an extremely broad and diverse practice background for a number of years, both in the 32 years I was in the OSHA, and then also in 5 years I've been with the Attorney General's office. With a few exceptions, there's probably not a type of case that would come before the Kansas Supreme Court that I have not had experience with or dealt with in one manner or another. With regard to involvement with the bar and involvement promoting the courts, I think that The service that I've had has been extensive, to say the least, between the 15 years, 5 different terms on the Board of Discipline, and then all of my activity with the Kansas Bar Association, Kansas Bar Foundation. And during those times and years, there were numerous other initiatives that I worked on to promote the courts and their independence. I participated with Gloria back in 2014, I believe it was, on a committee that worked to ensure that we had appellate evaluation that was made available to the public for evaluation of appellate judges. There's a number of things like that over the years. I have had a very diverse and extensive commitment to public service, both locally and at the statewide level. My 21 years on the local school board, my involvement with the Kansas Association of School Boards, both as a director and working through those officer chairs. I've been involved with civic activities, foundations and charitable organizations, both at the local level and at the statewide level, with the Bar Foundation, the Tower Mental Health Foundation. We've been very fortunate and blessed to have had great success on the local level with that, with the scholarship fund and the new Another Shape Promise scholarship program. We got our first set of kids graduated back in May that are in that now. And over time, that's going to provide literally tens of millions of dollars to graduates of Another Shape High School to further their education, whatever form of education they want to pursue. And then finally, and certainly not least of importance, is the rural factor. Right now, as it sits, Kansas Supreme Court, for the first time in its history, has zero representation from a rural area of Kansas. And so what that means is that 90% of the territory of the state of Kansas doesn't have any representation on the court. And one of the central hallmarks of the judicial system is supposed to be judgment by your peers. And right now, rural Kansans don't have any peers on the Kansas Supreme Court. So I think all in all, when you look at the total package of what I bring, I think it's unique, and I think it's something that would be a positive and valuable addition to the court. Shall I be nominated and shall I be selected?
Thank you. I have one more comment or question that relates to this application. This morning we were briefed by, I should say briefed, but got to speak briefly with the Chief Justice about the future of Kansas courts. One of the comments that she said that stuck in my mind was that right now, on the court as it exists, we don't really have anyone seated who has a breadth of experience across the entire spectrum of legal applications. And we look at your personal application, all the areas that you've been involved with in private practice and otherwise now in the AG's office, it seems like you have the sorts of qualifications to speaking directly to. And so I think that you've already mentioned some of the activities you're involved with, but I want to lead on to one quick question. As the president of KSB, president of KBA, as you know, we've had a little bit of a discussion between people north of 10th Street and south of 10th Street about education funding and you know, the 900-pound gorilla, what that represents. With your long history in the education business, I'll put it that way. How do you see increasing the ability for us to get a good, strong, long-term solution to that problem?
Well, I can certainly tell you that having personally been involved in 21 local school district budgets, I'm very familiar with the challenges and the trials that are faced. I think that it's important, of course, I need to preface that with the fact that if there were any further hearings, right now the gambling case, which is the Seminole School Finance case, sort of on hiatus, depending on what happens in the legislature. And so if for some reason that case would fire back up, I would not be able to participate in that simply because of the fact that I had worked in the Attorney General's office, and that case is one of the portfolio cases that we had. And so I would have to recuse if there were any additional matters in the end. In terms of other litigation, hopefully we can avoid. I think that there's a very fine line to walk in terms of the educational needs of the state, which are many. And they've been exacerbated, obviously, since the pandemic. Because we've had to have schools take steps to educate their youth that are drastically different than anything that's ever been attempted before. And so there's a whole plethora of issues that need to be looked at on a local basis in terms of financing, in terms of what's the best and what are efficient ways to educate our kids, and then how do we deal with serious matters such as the lack of high-speed internet service in rural Kansas. Because I can tell you that there are students in my own district that don't have internet at home. And so the district has to provide them with internet hotspots so they can take their school equipment home and be able to participate in the online education when that's available. And so it's going to take leadership from the governor, it's going to take leadership from the legislature to put together an all-encompassing package that deals with all of the issues in a fair, reasonable, efficient, but also adequate manner. And that's been a tough road to hoe. And hopefully solutions can be found that will not require the intervention of the court system. Because the people who are to be making the policy are the school folks, the legislature.
Thank you. I want to defer to others. Other questions, but I'll wait to the time. So, I'll defer to others.
Well, yes, no one has done more for their community really than you have. And we have some people who are new on the commission. I thought you might want to explain about the Educational Foundation for Neomiche that you helped establish.
Certainly, and we've got several things that we've created down there. One is the Education Foundation, and that benefits the school district particularly. And also, probably one of the things that I'm proudest about that organization is the special needs vocational program that it established, which took kids who were at risk of dropping out because general education didn't excite them, they weren't interested, and so they were struggling. And by creation of that program, we now have the opportunity to have a carrot and a stick. The stick is you have to go to school at least half time, but the carrot is when you get to be trained by licensed professionals to learn building trades. And we have programs, we have a number of homes that have been built, we have remodeling projects, and it's been an absolute godsend for kids who honestly prior to the commencement of that program were headed for the justice system. And so it's really rewarding to be able to see kids that can take those kinds of opportunities, stay in school, graduate, and get out and get further training and be successful in life. Because any of you have tried to hire a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician, you know that they're not that money. And so, especially in the rural areas, more of those we can educate and make available to them. The scholarship fund we started back in 1994, and at the time we needed to have a 501c3 that would create a vehicle that would allow people to make large gifts because we never had that before. And when I started it back in 94, my goal was someday to be in a situation where no student graduates from Nominating High School would not be able to further their education because of money. And I don't know if any of you have looked us up on the map or know anything about where I come from, but it is not a high socioeconomic area. And so we don't have the resources available for kids to get further education. And we've done a good job. We raised between $1.25 million and $1.5 million, so we were able to give out some decent scholarships. But last summer when I had an opportunity to meet our latest donor that created, work with him to create a Promise Scholarship Program. That is truly a game changer for Young Shea, because it will provide up to 4 years of full tuition and mandatory fees for whatever sort of post-high school education or training those students want to get, whether it's four-year college, community college, vocational technical school, certificates, whatever they want to get, whatever their dream is, we're going to help them achieve that financially. And it's a huge, huge thing. It's benefiting the community. We're already getting folks moving into town because they want their kids to be able to participate in that. And it's created a little bit of a housing crunch, and so we're working on trying to get developers and it's build more houses. So it's really exciting. It's really been a thrill for me to be able to participate in that and see what the difference can be for those kids and their futures.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I just wanted to follow up with that. Some of the people here know that we have a foster son. He's now 18. And every day I had to push him, shove him, force him, do everything I could to get him to go to school, you know, and pay him, you know, whatever would work, okay. We barely got him over the cliff for graduation. We made it. He got enrolled in vocations. He's at the Manhattan Area Technical College in welding. I can't keep up with him. You know, I'll say, well, have you done this? Oh, I've done this one. He is on fire and he's so excited about life. He's excited because he's registered to vote. Everything, Dennis, it's like night and day. I can't begin to thank you for what you've done, because that may be in the Ocean, we may be in Manhattan, but it's changing lives.
It is, and it is truly gratifying to be able to help kids like that, because let's face it, they are our future and we need to invest in them.
He has 3 brothers that have been in prison, and, you know, it's just a hopeless situation. But
And thanks to you for the difference that you've made.
well, that's the least we can do.
Welcome back. As you know, I was proud to nominate you for the KBA's Pillar of Professionalism, Pillar of Community Award, I should say, for your work down here for that scholarship program. The last response on your application makes reference also to another KBA type thing. And it wasn't clear to me whether that was something that you wanted to talk about in public. I sort of drew the inference that it might be. I'm happy, and I understand, I think there's merit in what you're saying in your response here in that last question, but I also want to give you the opportunity to talk about that in public in case you want to. But I personally won't demand that you do that. I'm simply saying if you want to talk about that, what you said here in public, I think you should have that opportunity.
I appreciate that more than you know, Terry. I felt, as you know, the 2 new members wouldn't know this, everybody else did. For a year ago, I was here and I was received enthusiastically, and when the voting began, I got all 9 votes in the first ballot. I was the first nominee selected. And then in between the first vacancy and the second, I went from 9 votes to 3. And we had the letter regarding the Board of Discipline case, which I think I responded to last year. And I think all of you had access to the materials from last time, and you'll see the response that was covered there. And, you know, honestly, that was one part of it. And I think it was literally at the 11.5 hour when that letter came in on the last evening of the last day for public comment. And so the second prong of the problem was that there were some who were very unhappy with the efforts that Natalie Hagan and I were asked to lead back in 2012 regarding merit selection for the Court of Appeals. As the attorneys in the room know, the Court of Appeal selection process is set by statute and not by constitution. And so, we were concerned that there would be an effort to change the selection process for the Court of Appeals. And the president of ABA at the time, Rachel Verner, who has a letter in my materials that also discusses it, asked us to see if there was a possibility of finding common ground with the legislature, with the governor, to see in the Bar Association, to see if there was any sort of compromise that might come up with a way that we could elevate the Court of Appeals to constitutional court. And Natalie and I and others negotiated. We literally spent hundreds of hours trying to find a way that a solution that everybody could reasonably live with, but it wouldn't fundamentally alter the merit selection process, because the merit selection process is critically important. And so we did, after many hours and lots of time and effort, we came up with what we thought was the best proposal. We had a vigorous say or lease discussion at the ABA board level, and when we ended up having the vote, it lost. The board did not approve it by either one. I don't remember the exact vote, but it was razor thin. And so once the board had spoken, there was no agreement, and the matter dropped. And then, unfortunately, later, the next legislative session, the legislature changed the process, and we have what we have now. And what we have now is the current governor she created her own committee, and she has tried to replicate, in essence, what this committee does at the Court of Appeals level. And it also includes Senate confirmation. Some folks think that's a great idea, some folks think that's a terrible idea. It has certainly engendered controversy, as we've seen here as of late with the most recent nominee for the Court of Appeals. And so it's a situation where there were some people who were very unhappy with me. And I think some of them got involved in trying to damage my chances with this commission. And I think everybody was probably blindsided by it. And again, it was at the very last minute. And so there wasn't really time to allow for a full discussion of what happened. But the thing that was the most disappointing to me was that there were stories that were spread about me about how I had made some sort of unholy alliance with the governor at the time to benefit myself in terms of court appointment. And obviously, I'm perfectly willing to accept criticism for things that I was involved with and that I participated. But it's a little difficult to have things that are spread that are not true and that never took place and not be able to respond to those. And I think it caught everybody off guard, and there wasn't time for anyone to prepare for it and to deal with it. And so I'm thrilled that it's out in the open. And I can tell you that it doesn't take a lot of examination to see that if I had worked out some sort of secret deal with the governor, I was a finalist and twice for the Court of Appeals when he was governor. And so had that deal existed, I'd already been on an appellate court and would have been some time ago. And so, again, I don't ever shy away from a discussion with people who don't agree with me or criticism when it's something that I could participate in. And, it's sort of like the disciplinary case. Reasonable and intelligent minds can differ. And they do in the legal world all the time. Just the fact that a district judge got reversed at the appellate level disqualify them from service on an appellate court. The Kansas Supreme Court itself has been reversed at least 4 times in the last 10 years by the United States Supreme Court. And does that mean that our Supreme Court that got reversed isn't suitable to serve? Absolutely not. It just shows that reasonable minds can differ. And they do. And if everybody agreed on 100% on everything, all the attorneys in the room had a lot less to do. And so I appreciate, like I said, more than you know, the opportunity to be able to discuss this and point out that these stories that were spread were utterly and categorically false. And I am proud of the efforts that KBA made to try and save merit selection back in 2012. It's still an issue, and I think that it's critically important that efforts continue to be made to try and elevate the Court of Appeals to a constitutional level court. The other thing that was a little bit disappointing was I got the feeling that some people thought that nominating me would be a waste because there was no way that the governor would want to appoint me because of concerns about the disciplinary case or whatever. And I think we've all seen with the Court of Appeals process that once the governor has her nominee, she is not going to shy away from a little controversy if she thinks she's nominated the right person. And so we all expect politics to be involved, as Dennis said, on the north side of 10th Avenue, but we really don't want them on the south. Anyone else?
I do want to follow up on the education discussion. You said you would recuse yourself. I assume that means that in a vote, you would recuse yourself. But in that subject matter area, I would hope that you would not have to eliminate your personal knowledge in a discussion that could help the court on this side get a better framework of understanding and even backdoor relationships on the other side of 10th Street, if that's something that
the canons of judicial ethics, just like the rules of professional responsibility for attorneys, would prohibit me participating in any matter in the Gannon case. But if there was a new case, let's say that we successfully conclude Gannon and the court dismisses the case and we move on, any future discussions or any future cases that would come forward regarding school finance, I would be able to participate in it, but look forward to that because I think I can bring to the court knowledge of how the school finance system works from a firsthand, multiple decade experience dealing with it that the court doesn't have now.
Well, thank you for that clarification. My apologies.
No problem.
Not understanding the rules, but I would just consider it a shame if something else does come up, and I have a strong suspicion that may, then I would hope that somehow you would be involved in that.
Well, I certainly could be if there was new litigation.
Thank you.
Yes, Joe.
You definitely have a depth of community service, and I really do like what you've done in the area of education, being an educator yourself. What would you then see the role if you were a member of the Supreme Court in their role when it comes to community service?
You know, I think, and I know all of the justices and I like all of the justices, but I think for a number of years, there has been a significant failing on the part of the court to get out and make themselves acquainted with the general public in terms of community activities. Myself, for example, I've been a member of our local Lions Club down in the other state for 35 years. And when I go and help flip hamburgers at the high school football game for our fundraiser, back when you could do that, it shouldn't matter whether I'm there as Dennis Pugh, local attorney, or whether I'm there as Dennis Pugh, Deputy Attorney General, or whether I would be there as Dennis Pugh, Supreme Court Justice. I think people need, the court needs to get out and needs to let people see them, interact with them. That's why I was so thrilled when the court started taking their cases, some of their cases on the road, and brought the court out to areas of Kansas that it had never been. Because unfortunately, as we know, and it's playing out right now on the national level with the United States Supreme Court, is everybody on all sides is trying to politicize the court system. And if people have never seen, never talked to a Supreme Court justice, never had any sort of interaction with them, they don't have any opinion, they don't have any knowledge. And so when issues come up for election of candidates, or you should vote for me because this is how I feel about the court, they have no rational way to decide whether that's important and how they should vote. And I think it's a lot harder for someone who has met somebody who is a judge or a justice and understands that they're people just like they are. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like they do, and that they're basically normal people that just simply have a job where they're called to make decisions. And I think the court desperately needs to get out and be involved in things. Obviously not be involved in things that create conflicts for them, but be involved in things that gets them out and lets people around the state see them, interact with them. And I think there's a beautiful opportunity with education for Supreme Court justices. And I know that when they go on the road, they've taken the time and the effort to go to schools and meet with students and talk about the court system. And I think that's great, and we've just got to figure out ways to do more, because the justices, they may sit here in the ivory tower in Topeka making decisions, but yet people want to see them, they want to know and understand who they are and what kind of person they are. And I think that having someone like me that's come from a broad-based background and a background of extensive community service would help facilitate that, because I certainly would have no problem whatsoever going out and meeting with people around the state, letting them know how the court system works, how the process works, but also let them understand that the Supreme Court justices are just like them. It just happen to be the people wearing the robes.
This is back to the mundane, I guess, but haven't seen you since the pandemic. What effect has this situation had on your practice?
Well, Mike, it's been an experience. Fortunately, we've had the technology and the methods to be able to move ourselves into a work remotely type situation. Right now, my division at the Civil Litigation Division at the AG's office, we divided our entire team into 3 equal teams. We work 1 week in the office and then 2 weeks remote. And we've been able to make that work pretty seamlessly, actually. And it's just required technology. It's required that I create a home office space down in Neoche, so I've got a place to set up. And I'm fortunate because I have the computer monitors and the other equipment where I can bring my laptop from the office, plug it into the docking station, and it works just like I'm in Topeka.
All your people are able to work from home?
Yes, we made sure that everybody had the equipment that enabled them to do that. And we do have one legal assistant who lives in the rural area. We were able to get her a cellular hotspot so she would have access and she could work from home. And of course, the court system has had to adapt. I've had numerous Zoom hearings, WebEx hearings. There's different kinds of electronic platforms, but they all work the same. And we have not had a trial yet that required live witnesses, and certainly not a jury at this point. But on the civil litigation side of things, to be very honest, once the jury trials start back up, the criminal cases that have incredible backlogs across the state are going to have to be handled on a priority basis. I think I was talking with a public defender down in Frederick County a couple of weeks ago. He said that there were approximately 1,900 criminal jury trials that were backed up in Sedgwick County. So we're obviously we're gonna have to figure out ways to make these things work. But the thing about it is that the system of justice that we have, especially in the criminal law area, is sacrosanct, and people who want to are entitled to have a trial by jury. And I don't know how you're gonna make a jury trial work by Zoom. And you're gonna have people in an area where they can see the proceedings, hear the witnesses, and handle the cases appropriately.
Anyone else? Okay, I think we're done unless, if you have something you want to add, we have time, go ahead and do it. As far as I think the questioning is concerned, they're through, but you certainly have an opportunity to close them, for closing remarks if you want.
Well, I would like to just very briefly, as I told you before, I appreciate the service that this commission provides to the state. I welcome the 2 new members. Glad to have you aboard. I really feel strongly that I bring a skill set and a background to this process that would be something that would be an asset to the court. I think that a well-rounded justice should be someone who's had broad experience in many areas of the law, someone who has demonstrated public service, who has demonstrated commitment to not only the practice of law, but the function of the court system, and I've done that. And as we've talked about before, I think it's incredibly important to have all geographic areas of the state represented. Because there are a number of cases that come from those areas, and those cases bring issues that are unique to rural areas, issues like water law, issues like disputes between agricultural groups. There's a lot of things that attorneys in the metropolitan areas just have not had experience with, and I think a rural presence on the court would be helpful, and it would be a very positive development. But again, I other than those things that we've talked about both today and before, I just appreciate everyone's consideration. And again, Terry, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about what happened last time, because that was very disturbing, and I know that it wasn't intentional, because it was last minute stuff that was sprung on everyone, and it left everybody in a very difficult spot. And I look forward to hearing from you, and again, I appreciate your service, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
In strong deference to Gloria and at her urging.
Jerry, before you make that motion, I need to raise one issue in public, is that okay? So all of you, except for the 2 new folks, were here last time when I described the in-depth relationship that my firm has with the Attorney General's office. In that we do work on assignment from the Attorney General's office from time to time. Maybe your firm does that too, Mike, I don't know. We have an active bid right now in front of the Attorney General and the Department of Administration for work on a going forward basis. And so I want to throw that out there and ask for the commission's view on whether I should recuse, which I'm absolutely willing to do, or whether the commission wants to proceed as it did last time and say, we as commissioners, the 8 of you, I will not participate in any vote along those lines. But I need your direction as to what you want me to do in light of that.
We want you to work.
Clear conflict.
We want you to get to work on this matter.
Well, I asked that there be a motion and a vote to tell me
Jerry,
what to
can you
do.
see that's conflict of interest personally?
Yes.
You see it as conflict of interest.
I disagree. Mr. Depew is not in charge of the Attorney General's office. A guy named Derek Schmidt is. He's not before this commission. And those contracts cannot be assigned without the Attorney General's approval. While I give great deference to Commissioner Campbell and all the service he's done to the commission, My motion is that Terry participate in deliberations, including Mr. Depew, at all levels for any reason. That's my motion.
Second.
I agree, although I don't think you need a motion.
I don't either.
I agree that it's your decision, but I would urge you not to review.
Shouldn't you add the other applicant who was the Attorney General's office to make the?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Is that okay, Mr. Secretary?
Yes.
Any applicant, Your Honor, I want Mr. Campbell or Commissioner Campbell to participate.
Yes.
Vote.
You want to vote?
Dennis seconded it. Dennis seconded that, Mike.
Okay.
So you're gonna take a vote on it.
You want to vote on it?
Get some, just, you want discussion first.
He, in essence, supervises my work under the existing contract, and I would anticipate if there is, and supervises is too strong of a word. He is not my client on any existing work. Theoretically, if I were assigned work to defend a case against the Attorney General himself, then Dennis would be a part of the client. The existing work I have is for other government officials right now. The payment flow is approved. My bills are submitted to the Attorney General's office. They forward them on to the Department of Administration, and those bills are paid.
Nikki, will he have any authority on whether or not he gets a contract?
The answer is I don't know. I would imagine as the chief of civil litigation that he would have some input.
I guess it's sort of confusing. So is this what he was talking about in 2012?
No, it's new.
I would hope that he would hold himself to the same level of integrity in making the decision to take that, have you as a client, if you will, with everything you learned about.
I can't quite hear you, Francis, I'm sorry.
I would like to think that the Attorney General's office would not hold any vote against Terry Campbell. I think that Commissioner Campbell has held himself to a very high level of integrity. And I would expect the same regarding this matter. I don't think you need to recuse yourself. I don't think that would prejudice them. That's my opinion.
I'm also thinking of it from the perspective of protecting Terry. That, you know, perceptions become reality. And so that's also another concern I have. Is there a way of recusing from discussion as to not influence one way or the other, but still participating? I'm trying to think about compromise.
I don't think there should be one. Respectfully, I think that the abundance of caution is so that the public knows that Mr. Campbell's firm does work for the state of Kansas as assigned from the Attorney General's office. That is not enough, in my opinion, for Terry to recuse himself, and we need his vote and participation in our deliberations.
I want to discuss it thoroughly, and I agree with Gary. But whatever discussion you have or other questions that you have, I don't, to me, some of this legal stuff is a little different. Their firm does good work and would do good work on whatever the Attorney General had to do it. Our firm has done work for the Attorney General. I don't even know whether they're doing anything or not. So it just doesn't seem to me that it's his decision. So I don't think it's up to him. I don't think he should refuse. Secondly, I agree with the motion. I talk way too much for a chairman. The chairman's supposed to keep their mouth shut. And then you notice I have a little trouble doing that.
So the negative comments that he's made here doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about now.
Correct.
Are you sure?
I don't. The issue I raised is a going forward this thing that has a financial impact on my firm. It may have an effect on how the Attorney General decides things, and that's why I raised the issue. It doesn't have anything to do with Mr. Depew's involvement in a in the decision about whether the Kansas Bar Association would agree to or not to change the Court of Appeals nominating commission method. And those are two totally different issues.
I didn't get the deck.
Carol, are you still concerned? Do you have other questions on this?
No, I mean, I still have concerns, but just about this one particular issue. I just, from the number of years I spent in government, we just always err on the side of caution. And so with the background I have, that's what I would go on the side of caution.
Are there other questions or comments? Terry has a motion, would you restate it?
My motion is that Terry participate on all applicants, including those from the Attorney General's office. And I believe Dennis is second.
Is there further discussion? If all in favor, hold up your hand. Pose same sign.
I'll abstain.
So you good. The motion carried. Okay, we're ready, I think, now to consider going into an executive session.
I don't know if you want to consider how long you want to go into there, but we've cut into what we thought was going to be our time. I don't know if you want to make it till 4 o'clock.
It's 4:15.
Let's make it 4:15.
That's fine. Whatever you're going to do, it'll just help us with the public and our YouTube.
Ready? At this time, I move that the commission recess into an executive meeting to discuss sensitive financial information contained within the personal financial records or official background checks of the candidates for judicial nomination. The justification for recessing into an executive meeting is to protect the privacy rights of the candidates. I also request that Judge Shima and Michelle Moore be allowed to meet as commission staff, who will reconvene in this room at 4:15 p.m. to continue in an open meeting. Chair, do I hear a second?
Yes.
Second by Chair Schultz. Any discussion?
Yeah, hold on.
No, I kind of like the way it was going. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, hold up your hand. Pose same sign. Motion carried. We're in executive session.
We'll be in executive session and on a new live stream at 4:15 for anybody watching on YouTube.